All right. Well, I am here with Derek Watson. I'm Joshua Phillips, and Derek and I co-founded the what we call today the Encounter Training back in 2005 when we were much younger, almost 20 years ago, believe it or not. And we actually met 1997 when we discovered this training. So, Derek, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit? Who you are personally and professionally, and
Sure. Derek Watson, I grew up in New Jersey, and which, I think was a great place to grow up. Has a bad rap in many ways, but wonderful place, Garden State. Spent quite a few years in California, and then recently, 25 years ago, moved to Raleigh, and love it there.
you're like a melting pot.
That's right.
New
I've
Jersey
been
to California to Raleigh. Wow.
Yep. And so when I was in California, had started our family, married to Lori. I have 3 boys, and ended up going up to Northern California to participate in this weekend that a friend of mine that we'd been meeting we would meet weekly for breakfast. And this guy, Gary Metz, and I were wanting to make a difference in the world. And he came back from this thing and he says, "You have to do it." And I was like, okay. I had no idea what it was, and went into this 4-day training up in Northern California, and had a very profound experience for myself that I got involved, and over a period of time came to the conclusion that I wanted to actually be a facilitator for these 4-day events, and went through that process and started doing it.
Yeah, and you've probably facilitated. We don't have a count, but 150 trainings would be probably in the neighborhood. So at 4 days, you've spent
several
600
years.
days, a couple of years in
ugly, for the most part, ugly hotel rooms.
Exactly. Unfortunately, that's just where we have to have these events. Sometimes churches. So
yeah.
Anyway, but so Derek has been our facilitator for these trainings. We've worked together on 50, 60 trainings. And, I think most of us who stay involved in this work, it's kind of like your experience. We have a profound experience out of it, and we want to come back and serve, and we want to provide that experience for other people. So again, for anyone that may be watching this that doesn't know, what we do, like I said, it's a 4-day training called the Encounter Training. You also do it, in Oklahoma City under the name Possibilities for Life, which is kind of like a sister organization. And, but it's the same training, basically.
Same thing. Yep.
Same training. So, just at a 30,000 foot view, how would you, at the kind of big picture, describe the training?
So the training is a series of structured experiences that build on each other. And really the goal is, we all have arrived where we're at in our life through the experiences of our life, and we've wound up being a certain way. And there are lots of great things about how we've wound up. We're very successful people in the ways that we're successful, but there are also some limitations in how we wound up being that often hold us back from being all that God has called us to be, or all that's possible for us to be in our hearts of hearts. We know that there's more there that we're not really bringing to the table. And so the training is about, in many ways, completing some of the events in the past that may hold us back. And through that process of completing them, we're freed up. We free up energy. We free up capacity to engage life in a deeper, more meaningful way.
Yeah.
And I think, our culture particularly kind of lulls us into, you could almost call it like tranquilized obviousness. We just kind of go through life. It's kind of like that experience of if you're ever going a long drive and you realize you have not been driving for the last 30 minutes. You're like 30 minutes down the road.
I've definitely done that.
And how did I get here? I don't even remember that. And so often I think we go through life in that kind of state where we're not really engaged, where we're just kind of going through the motions. And so the training is about, in some ways, waking up. Yeah. It's in some ways about, wrestling with the things that we haven't really wrestled with so that we can actually move into a new area. So rather than sort of doing the same kind of pattern in life, it's about breaking into new areas.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what we started talking before we started recording, and
we should have recorded sooner.
Yeah, we should record that stuff. That was great. So, no, we'll talk more about what the training is, and we call it an experiential training, which is much different than just where you're sitting listening to somebody speakers talk,
like we're doing now.
Like we're doing now. That's not it at all. But I was saying, like, there's a lot of great ideas in the training, and you're great at just sprinkling in distinctions and quotes and things from the Bible, and they're powerful ideas, but somehow they don't. I think I was saying, like, I listen to podcasts all the time, and I'm like, just like we're doing now, there's like ideas, and on a rare occasion, an idea might actually kind of burrow itself in your brain and, really start making a difference in your behavior. But there's something special that happens when you set aside 4 days with a group of people that are hungry and humble and willing to, kind of go through this process, that just makes the ideas like just so much more powerful. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. That I think ideas aren't as powerful as we think they are. What's powerful is like a change in context, which is an idea. Obviously, we're going to have to talk about ideas, but it's kind of like the world will change when our context for the world changes, and so. A lot of the, in a training, it's like a microcosm of life. You've got relationships that, maybe you've known people for a little while, maybe acquaintances of yours are there as well, people you just met a day or two ago. And so out of that microcosm of life, what's so fascinating is we will recreate the major themes, issues, kind of thoughts in that we have in our life in this little kind of, contained artificial space. All of those real issues come in, and what's helpful about that is then we can actually, the ideas are kind of in the context of something that's real, but in some ways simplified, and so people, I think, can see, wow, they can see the impact of ideas in a way and experiment with them and try new things and see how the different, how the results change.
Yeah. So usually this is an intimate group of anywhere from 15 to as big as 15 to 50. And people show up like people in your life. So it's like, there's your dad that judged you harshly, and there's your teacher that didn't believe in you, and
then your coach that supported you. I mean,
yeah.
It's not all just the negative,
yeah.
but every kind of character, and which really I think speaks to the fact that we're painting that meaning. Like, this person isn't my father who judged me harshly, but for whatever reason, I'm adding that meaning into this brand new relationship, and I think that's something that we don't really see very often in life, is how much, 100% of the meaning we're creating, we're adding that to whatever happens.
Yeah. So let's go a little deeper about this idea of experiences and how maybe in some sense they're more powerful or more impactful. We could talk about, like, just, listening to a podcast, or reading a book. And then there's like one-on-one counseling, which certainly we're both big believers in. My daughter's a therapist. Your wife's a therapist.
My son,
your son's a therapist. Lots of therapists in our families.
Yeah.
But there's something distinctly and wholly different about creating a group experience. Maybe describe a little bit about, like, what is like when we say an experience, what do you how would you describe that?
So it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours long. It's sort of it's actually difficult probably to describe.
Well, let me take a stab at it. So you're the facilitator, so maybe it's harder for you because you're like
Sure.
on the floor, facilitating these things. The one I typically go to is the idea of feedback. So we kind of start out on Thursday evening. If you come to the encounter Thursday evening, there is going to be
Which is the first day.
theme. At the first day, it's going to be a theme of feedback, and so you'll actually do a little bit of discussion around it. What is feedback? How is it helpful? What's not helpful?
What to pay attention to.
What to pay attention to, and you'll give some meaning and structure to the idea of feedback. But then we actually take it a step further, and we actually do feedback where you're in small groups and you're standing in front of a small group, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and they are telling you how they experience you, which is kind of the structure we're using as a way of feedback. And so it's not just like, oh, this is the idea of feedback, but we're actually doing the work. So we're marrying the idea with an experience. And then at night, you have a chance to do a good bit of homework where you can debrief that experience.
Yeah, and so I think it's the power is probably more in the debrief, where you're saying, okay, in your example of the feedback exercise, people maybe said things that impacted me, and I don't even know why. Maybe someone said, you're kind, and I start crying, and so. It's not always obvious in the moment where my reaction is grounded.
Yeah.
And so you get to, afterwards think about, I really felt, poignant that really touched me and I don't even know why. And so you can begin to unpack it. I think the distinction about experiential learning, which is what the training is that, you don't have to apply the ideas. Right. If you go to a retreat or a training where the purpose is to gather ideas, you're still left with, okay, what do I do with those ideas? Mm-hmm. And there's almost a way to think about, how can you have your natural self-expression embody those ideas? We're saying, okay, like I'm, as a Christian, I'm called to love my neighbor as myself. How do I actually embody that as my natural self-expression, not just as, okay, I'm supposed to do it as a Christian. I'm not exactly sure how to do it. I'll try some things. I might fail. It may not go well. And so then I'm left with, okay, well, maybe tomorrow I'll try it again.
Yeah.
And so it's really, experiential training is powerful because it's how we learn. I know we both have relatively young grandchildren at this point. God, amazing to think about. And they're becoming people experientially,
learning to walk.
Yeah, learning to walk, learning to talk, just interacting. And it's not something like we sit them down and say, this is what you do. And then you have to learn, okay, I'm going to have to learn to balance. And, it's not applying ideas. That's comes later as we get into school.
Yeah, and it is, and we use the example of a child learning to walk. It's all through failure and experiment and what works, what doesn't work, and that's really what the training's like. Where we have, it's much different than probably most events where we encourage people to try things, to sin boldly, as we say, to experiment, to not do your normal thing in life, but to try something new, have some creativity and do something different and see how that works out. Maybe it's in the feedback exercise, maybe you're just more honest than you normally would be. And let's just see how and maybe you're more open to receiving feedback than you normally would be in life. So,
well, and I think, particularly about the feedback exercise, what can be fairly shocking is that people can see things that you might think were not obvious to be seen.
Yeah.
And someone that just met me, 6 hours ago, we've had minimal interaction perhaps, still can have an experience of me that, when they're honest is cuts me to the quick.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe I had that kind of hidden.
Yeah.
And it, but maybe the reality is people are seeing it all the time.
Yeah, and to go back to what you said earlier about how like there's just things inside that you're just not even. Well, we talk about the idea, excuse me, that there are different areas of knowledge is what you know that you know. This is I'm just stealing this from Derek's material.
Oh,
but
I stole it. It's all stolen.
everything's stolen. What you know that you know, what you know that you don't know, and what you don't know that you don't know. What you go, I didn't even know I didn't even know I didn't know that, you know. But and when you think about it, there's like all this. But in the realm of your personal being, there's I think a lot going on. You know, the example of like somebody cuts you off in traffic and you just like road rage, scream at them, and you're like, maybe later, you know, you have an epiphany like what is going on that was happening inside of me, and so you know, of course, that's an experience right there. And if you were in this example, if you were like, you know, the passenger in the car, you'd be like, what would you say? You know, if you're the passenger in the car, the person that just like screamed at somebody.
Maybe I should drive.
Exactly. But you would be like, you know, what do you think that's about? You know, and this is kind of like what the training is, which is kind of like, how come? Why did you you know, you always call yourself the question man in the training. You're not really the answer man. You're the question man.
Sure. Probably
your favorite question is, how come? So.
Which is a great question, but we could get into that at some point. But, you know, I think, you know, what those kinds of experiences point to, I think, is that we do have these events in our past that if they're not really fully experienced out in a way, it will influence my moment to moment, day to day.
Yeah.
You know, and so it could be that, yes, I got cut off, and maybe the guy was crazy that, you know, was racing through the traffic or whatever. And so I you know, having some reaction is probably warranted, but there's more juice in my reaction than really is warranted.
Yeah.
And so that's that extra juice, so to speak, is coming from those events in the past that I really haven't fully, you know, completed, like experienced out, felt, you know, the hurts of my life, because, you know, we just don't like to feel pain. So, I mean, part of it is to complete those things that were painful in the past.
Yeah. I know we've kind of stayed on this topic. I want to stay just a little bit longer on this topic of experience, because I think that it is the core distinction between, I mean, I'm looking over there, I've got all sorts of books. I mean, we could just read through Atomic Habits or, you know, a number of different, and there's nothing wrong with any of those ideas, but what draws a distinction with the encounter training is that it is an experience. I wanted to just share one personal experience, I guess, from my life years ago. You know, you've heard of these, have you ever done the ropes courses, the high ropes courses?
Sure.
You know, a high ropes course, as described, you were high up in a tree doing these different exercises. And I remember doing this exercise a number of years ago, and I'm watching other people climb these ladders, you know, really high. It's kind of scary, and it's like a team thing. And what starts to rise up in me, I remember just sitting in the grass watching people, is like, I'm going to be the only one that doesn't do it. And it was this, it started to come to the surface, this deeply held belief that I'm just not enough. That, you know, and that was like a program kind of running under the surface of my life that, for whatever reason, that I'm, you know, probably because I was small as a kid, you know, my brothers were bigger than me, faster, stronger. And, you know, so I always felt kind of less than. But going through that experience and then actually doing the high rope thing myself and actually succeeding, it was like a breakthrough. It was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that this lived in, and this occurred a number of times until I felt like I was able to break through that limiting, you know, we talk about limiting beliefs, that, yeah, it was just kind of living in me, and I had to see it through an experience. And then once I saw it, I could actually address it and then potentially overcome it or change that belief. I am enough, you know, I do have what it takes, you know, and yes, that's where the value, I think, comes in.
Yeah, and that's a great example of something that was in the area of you didn't know that you didn't know.
Yeah, it was just rising up.
And then you move, you know, it appeared, and so then it moved into that you know that you don't know. Like, this is happening, I don't know why. And then you can, at that point, if you choose, obviously spend the time to figure, I know that I'm enough, or anything like that. And, so the power is not so much the idea, it's like actually what I would call embodying it, having it be alive in your body, not just in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big difference there.
And I think, when Jesus said, if you want to come to me, you must come as a little child. That always speaks to me of this need to embody these wonderful principles that Jesus spoke about. But he was trying to point to, I think, the idea or the reality that it's not something that you just hold in your head as a concept, but that you actually experience moment to moment, day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's say somebody's watching this and their friends encourage them to go to the encounter training. And by the way, if you go, you're going to meet this guy. So on Thursday morning, I'll get up first, and then Derek will get up and take things. And I always like to say, on Thursday morning that I truly believe that my friends and family who've been through the training, and other people's, that they are in great hands. We are not perfect. The training takes a lot of, just like life, a lot of twists and turns, a lot of misses. But always believe, I have a great faith, number one, in God, that he's going to come through. And we do this in a spiritual context. Belief that God has great things for us to accomplish and great things to do in and through us. And we're helping to really set people free. And if they're already free, like maybe there's a new level of freedom they can accomplish. But anyway, what would you say to someone who's thinking about coming to the training?
Well, I think, it's, in some ways it's not for everyone, or it's not for, in this moment, everyone. I think perhaps at some point it could be for, each individual would be in a space for taking advantage of something like the training. But, so a desire for something new is very important. If you're just going because someone said it was good for them, I think you really need to sort out, like, what if I could have any experience in my life, what would it be? Mm-hmm. Like a deeper connection with my wife, or a deeper, working out a relationship with a child that maybe is got a difficult, in a difficult stretch or something like that. You want to have something that you're shooting for.
Yeah.
Versus just like, it's not like a smorgasbord where you just go and say, oh, I'll take some of this, some of that. Yeah. It's much more of, hey, I'm really hungry for something, so I'm willing to eat anything.
Yeah. I always say, I think the two best qualities for someone coming to the training is they're hungry and they're humble. I think if you're hungry and you're humble, you're going to get some tremendous value. And of course, we start the training. The first conversation is always, what are you here for? Right?
What do you want out of this time?
What do you want out of this time? What are you here for? And people share, and you write things up on the board. Of course, the reality is, so often we hear people say, gosh, the thing I thought I came for, there was something greater. There was something totally different. Again, maybe out of my awareness that I got out of it. So it's like God's abundant, and he's going to do so much more than maybe even the
little, we can ask or think.
Then we can ask or think. So Jesus said. So, yeah. And, if we were to put it in a spiritual context, I mean, how do you, again, when we're framing the 4 days of the training, how would you put it in a kind of a biblical spiritual context?
I think of John 10:10, which is the scripture that Jesus said, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I have come that they would have life, and life in abundance.
Yeah.
And so I think, from a spiritual standpoint, our birthright is to have every good gift, love, the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, etc., kindness, self-control, and that's our birthright. But I think along the way, in different experiences, we may have sold ourselves short.
Yeah.
We've settled for, I don't think I can get what I really, really want. So I'll just settle for something that's sort of like it, but not quite as much. And so that to me is that, stealing and destroying, stealing hopes, destroying vision. And so, it's about, in some ways, creating a clearing. Sometimes, quite often, I refer to the training like a gymnasium. You go to the gym to actually move, metal, as they say.
Yeah, we're not going to sit in a class and talk.
Right, and you don't go to the gym just to look at stuff, to go, oh, if I look at this, rack, I'm going to get stronger. No,
we're doing work. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
The
you have to
training is
actually
work.
do, make some effort. And partly that, from a spiritual standpoint, that goes back to the fall. It's by the sweat of our brow that we're going to make our way. And so it's going to require some effort, in the sense of, I think, not so much physical effort, obviously, but in willingness to be open to see things that may be a little uncomfortable to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll add another scripture. I think it's in 1 Corinthians that talks about, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us run the race and throw off everything that entangles or encumbers us. And I think the training is about that, throwing off the things that have entangled and encumbered us, and
absolutely.
Very few people probably would say that they're living life, completely unencumbered, in complete freedom, total love, and so there are things that are always going to be snagging us, keeping us from running the race. And I think God desires for us to the abundant life, to use the analogy of a race, to win. Like racing is like the joy, the fun, the thrill of running, a race. Although I've never been much of a runner myself, but from what they say, it seems like it's a thrill. So.
Yeah, I think, but we're all running the race that we're in. You know what I mean? It's like, I think it's a great analogy, but there's always something. I think we all are, given that we're unique creations, there's a contribution that only we can make to the world. And no one can make that contribution but us. And I think one of the strategies, if you will, that the enemy employs is to have us start thinking that that's not really possible, that, Joshua would do it better than I. So I'll just let Joshua do it, and I'll just kind of sit back. And so it's a strategy that I think that people bench themselves out of the game of life. And I think God wants us to be fully engaged. I mean, there's work to be done to answer His call in the world.
Yeah.
And so the training is about, sort of, as you say, throwing off all those things that encumber. And again, many of those may be not something that I'm even aware of, know.
Yeah.
And I know when I went through this experience, I had a profound emotional experience because I had really shut down my emotion. Mm-hmm. I had made a decision along the way that I was really going to succeed by being unemotional and highly intellectual. Mm-hmm. And I'm still highly intellectual.
You do. Sometimes in the training, he tries to give away IQ points, although you're giving away fewer as you.
I'm really hoarding. I'm hoarding my IQ points at this point.
There's a graph, but let's be honest. Derek is quite smart. So.
And so it's not like that was a bad thing, but what was hurtful about it, or wasn't helpful about it was that I was kind of segmenting off this whole part of my life that was more emotional. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of, hurts that maybe in the grand scheme of things you would say, well, I wasn't abused per se, but there were still hurts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I hadn't really, over a period of years, kind of was less and less emotional because I just didn't want to, come face to face with some of those things.
Yeah. So we kind of focused on the feedback exercise. Like I said, there are like at least 7 experiences, and then there's just highs and lows of every day. And it's not, some experiences may not hit you, but I guarantee you that at least 1 or 2 of them are going to be profoundly impactful to you. We do an experience around the power of secrets and how they diminish your power. We do an experience around the urgency of life and kind of bringing things into focus, what's most important in your life, and focusing on that. We do an experience around forgiveness and just the profound, not just talking about forgiveness. I forgive Steve, blah, 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 but actually experiencing out, the grief and the pain that perhaps is associated with the person or people you need to forgive, and that's a profound experience. And there's times of celebration. And by the way, I always tell people, I'm like, the encounter is fun. I mean, we laugh so hard when people start being real, and you're real, and it's just, there's just kind of a joyful fun about it. Sometimes when things can get heavy, but it's like, man, we can also just be playful with things. We can have fun. We laugh a lot.
I think
it's not just hardcore.
And I think one of the experiences that I'd say nearly everyone comes out of the training was a profound sense of being connected with other people in a way that is very fulfilling. And so I think at the end of the 4 days, there's almost a sadness of this special time is ending, and it's almost like this anticipatory letdown of like this sense of connection and the power that comes from those kind of honesty and authenticity. It's relatively rare in our world.
Yeah. I think we do foster a community in 4 days that's pretty profound, and oftentimes people will say on Sunday, like, this is the closest I've felt ever to a group of people. And then of course, kind of for most of you, it's like you could still need to go out and replicate that in your world. But and I will say, like, kind of what came to mind is like this idea, well, is this just a mountaintop you hear that, like a mountaintop experience, going to church camp. And I mean, there's always some truth to that. And I think obviously for most people, the encounter's not going to like set you on a trajectory to freedom and love forever. I'd recently kind of added this idea that it's like, maybe it can move you out of the orbit you've been in and set you, you think about a satellite or something, and we can set you on a new trajectory that's maybe more powerful and bigger vision than you've had before, more passion, fresh passion. Like, we can set you on that trajectory, but then you do still have to continue to do the work. Maybe you need to go to counseling. Maybe you need some coaching. Maybe you need, other things to continue to fan the flame. But we can set you on a new trajectory for your life.
And I think it's very true what you're saying. It's not like anyone arrives in a,
I'm done.
Yeah, we're not. We're always becoming something new in our life, and I think that's, partly what that's God's design. I mean, I love the. I don't know if you ever read the Narnia books. Of
course.
But
just read them like in last year.
So, in the final book, there's this beautiful image of heaven where they kind of, I don't want to go through the whole story, but in essence, they're running. And it's like they're running through the same territory over and over again. And each time it's becoming more real and more sort of present. And so I think that's, if I think of heaven, that's partly that's very attractive to me. This idea that we're not just done. When the new heaven and the new earth comes, we're going to be continuing to become who God has called us to be.
Yeah. Was that the Great Divorce? Was there the Great Divorce where they were going up to the hills and the blades of grass were going?
Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe it was the Great Divorce.
I think there's same sort of thing. I think in the Narnia books, but in the Great Divorce, they're on this bus with Jesus, and they get let off. And at first, they're not real. They don't have substance to them, and the blades of grass are like going
that's
through
a beautiful
their feet. Yeah. But as they traject up into the hills,
as they get more and more substantive and authentic, then the grass, bends like you think it would.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
that's beautiful.
so we love doing this work. We really do it as a ministry. We don't do it for finances or for
Fame and fortune.
Fame or fortune. Those have not come. We've had probably just with the encounter training here in Nashville, we've had 12 to 1,500 people go through, and one of the things I love is special. We're having a Christmas party tonight. You might see the stockings hung back there, but we're having
With care.
We're having the encounter Christmas party night that will have a number of grads, and we have people that have served with us for 15, 20, 25 years, and they're still feeling the impacts. I will say that for a lot of people, it does profoundly impact them, and it's something that they continue to want to grow in. And with this community, so community is a big part of it for us, and just friendships and doing this work together.
And one just cycle back for a quick second on the mountaintop experience that you mentioned. I think one of the perhaps surprising things about experiential learning is, your head will be relatively empty, but you will discover you're being different in the weeks and months afterwards. And so there's this ongoing impact because you're embodying something new that is really in some ways outside of your conceptual realm. And I know we started talking about the difference between concept and experience, and the beauty of the training is God can pack in a ton of newness into your life in these 4 days that will actually be only revealed over a period of weeks and months. And I think that's why people, and I think of, many people who, I met, 25 years ago who are still, loving the work that God's doing through this training and find it to be helpful and valuable in their life.
Yeah. So if a friend sent this to you and we're encouraging you to come to the encounter training, we'd love to have you join us. Our commitment is to dare greatly, and we're not here to pussyfoot around. We definitely are swinging for the fences. We want there to be a profound and life-changing breakthrough. Even if your life is great, there's always greater levels. I think you can always see that there's more ground to take. We never arrive. And it's the most impressive people are the people. I think of Don Finto, our pastor for many years. The guy's 95 years old. He's still like hungry and going after it and learning and growing, and it's like it just never ends. And I think if you have that hunger to continue to grow, this could be a great experience for you. And if you're struggling in life, this could be a great experience as well to help you kind of come out of whatever struggle you're in right now. So we'd love to have you. You'll get a chance to spend a lot of time with Derek, and my wife Amy and I will be in our team. We have a team of people that serve, and just a great group of people, and they'll be serving you and loving you. So we'd love to see you at a future encounter training.
Absolutely.